Would you like a DAP that when you show it to someone and you play the music to someone, they'd assume that it's twice the price than it really is? If the answer is yes, I have something good for you today. Here I'm holding Hiby R4. It's a $250 DAP. But when you look at it, and it's just build quality and materials used, which is aluminum on the sides and some scratch resistant glass and a little bit of plastic here and there, but not much really. It feels robust, it feels responsive and clicky with physical buttons and have decent heft and solidity to it. I would guess it's pricier than that. There's a quite big screen here too. It's an IPS one, 4.7 inches of a really decent quality, and the whole thing runs on the Android operating system, customized for the audio, of course, and has quite a fast processor, Snapdragon, that goes into mid-range smartphones, so it feels quite snappy and fast. And it's never laggy, with a decently sized battery that, in my estimates, would run me around 8 to 10 hours of music playback. But it also has really good standby time. I noticed that I can keep this one on a standby for days and days. I think I kept it more than a week for sure. Almost 2 weeks in a standby, and then I just unlocked the screen and I realized I still have 29% battery, which is a good standby time. It means that operating system does not burst battery unnecessarily in a standby mode. And yeah, of course, I forgot that. Probably the most important thing about a DAP, it's based around Sabre DAC chip, actually 4 of them. They're not flagship grade or anything, but Hiby is using 4 of them to improve their performance. And then they give you 2 possible outputs, single-ended and balanced, and some audio dedicated settings like 3 different gain levels and choice of the several digital filters. And also something that's very interesting, there is a system-wide equalizer and DSP support. Because previously, if I remember correctly, only this default app, Hiby Player, had equalizer and DSP capabilities. But if you change it, if you use something else, and you can use anything you like, because this is an Android system. You have Play Store, you can download Spotify app, Tidal app, Qobuz app. They're official apps if you like, their interface is better. And in that case, you wouldn't have a good DSP or EQ solution. But now, even though you have these in the Hiby app, you also have them like a system-wide settings, meaning that anything that you do with your parametric equalizer, for example, will be applied system-wide for all the apps and all the players, which is something that I believe the DAP should do. Talking about the equalizer, I have some experience to share here. So first I tried using MSEB, which is some sort of DSP processing which can alter your tone in various different ways. For example, to make your sound warmer or colder. And I tried using MSEB, but I didn't like it. As soon as I enable anything there, I noticed the overall decrease in the sound fidelity that is not even related to the slider that I'm tinkering with. Not just warmth, but fine high frequency detail retrieval is suffering when I enable MSEB. So I didn't like it that much. On the other hand, parametric equalizer that I also tried worked much better in my experience. I add a little bit of bass or reduce upper mid-range or add highs, whatever you want to do in that advanced parametric equalizer works really well, and I didn't notice it influenced the overall sound fidelity in any negative way. So that's pretty good in my opinion, because now you can alter tonality, you can play with that EQ without worrying about what negative it will do to the signal. Like MSEB that definitely does some sort of heavy DSP processing, and personally I didn't like that one, but try for yourself, maybe you have different opinion. One last thing to note is that the amplifier located in this DAP is of a Class A variety, and on a single-ended output we have something like 100 something milliwatts of the power, which is very reasonable and not something to be frowned upon. But when you move to the balanced output, it quadruples. It's something like 500 milliwatts, and you can hear that. There is more slam, there is more soundstage width and there, so if you can, try to use balanced output. And I'm definitely 100% sure that I'm going to miss some features, but you can always find that anywhere online. Manufacturers love bragging about features and everything their DAP can do. All sorts of ways you can use them, or just any little convenience feature it has. You can always see that on the official web page. You don't need me to repeat all of that. But what I will not miss is how it sounds, and even more importantly, how it compares to some closest competitors and maybe even some pricier DAPs, because this one can really do it. So I started listening to Hiby R4, and what I realized is, first of all, tonality is very well balanced. It's very neutral. It's not skewed towards bassline or towards high frequencies to sound overly analytical or lean. Everything is there in right measure. When it comes to detail retrieval, that's actually great. There's plenty of things that this DAP extract from recordings. Main leading tones are energetic, they're sharp, they're really clean and well outlined, but then you hear many tiny things, atmospheric things happening in the background, and all of those tones are well separated, really nicely layered, and everything has its own space. Then the sound stage is quite decent. This is not a narrow and congested sounding DAP. You have decent amount of just empty room and separation between instruments. But it's also not the widest and airiest and most open that I've heard. But something that really surprised me is dynamics. That's quite strong. This DAP has punch, it has kick, it can engage fast-paced rhythms. And for example, I was listening to this Britpop song, and I love this one, it's positively silly. There is a real drive needed for this song to sound engaging and to make you nod your head and feel younger than you really are. Not all DAPs can do that, especially at this price. They can be detailed but sound a little bit lean or lightweight, but not this one. This one is a heavy hitter. It has density, it has body, bassline punches hard, but it's also well controlled. It's not a muddy mess. The whole sound has that intensity and focus and good slam. But it's not always easy to realize how good something sounds in a complete isolation, and because of that I started comparing it to some other devices. And the first one, which I would like to be able to compare it the most, would be Shanling M1S, because I reviewed that one like a year ago, and it used to cost $230, which is quite comparable to Hiby R4, but I do not have that DAP with me anymore. I don't have it because it didn't bring anything interesting for me personally, so I have to keep it. And why is that? Because when I compared it to some budget standalone DAC dongles that I can attach to my smartphone, it was quite comparable to something like Hidy's S9 Pro Plus or Hidy's XO, for example. And both of these are around $100 US. And that was the level of performance of Shanling M1S. So by using this one connected to my smartphone, I can basically replicate the performance of Shanling M1S. As I said, I barely differentiated them. And I can tell you this one, Hiby R4 sounds considerably and noticeably better than what Hidy's S9 Pro Plus sounds like, and by extension, Shanling M1S. Now I know I overuse adjectives like slightly or a little bit better and things like that. But in this case, even though I expected something like that, no, R4 is actually very noticeably and quite considerably better sounding than this small standalone DAC and Shanling M1S, in a way that it has just more authority, more punch, heavier bass line, but also more focused tones, cleaner tones with cleaner, better outlined edges, wider soundstage, airier soundstage, and it's just more dynamic and more transparent overall. And I was quite surprised by that. So I just quickly took another standalone DAC, which is Moondrop Moon River 2 Ti, which is $180, and it's still a standalone DAC that needs your smartphone. And when I compared them, Hiby R4 was still a better sounding device than that DAC and my smartphone. But this time the gap was much smaller. It is just a slightly better sound, slightly airier, wider in the terms of sound staging, and slightly better control and grip in the bass line than what Moondrop Moon River 2 Ti can provide. And for $250 it manages to surpass the best standalone DAC below $200 that I personally tested. And then I realized, yeah, I would need to bring out some bigger guns if I actually want to challenge Hiby R4. And for that I used Hiby R6 III that I reviewed some time ago, and I keep it with me even though I don't really use DAPs on the regular daily basis, just because it's a really good DAP and I keep it around for these kinds of situations. So I'm able to bring these comprehensive comparisons to you. And this is $499, I believe, or $449 DAP, meaning that it's basically twice the price of Hiby R4. And when I compare them directly head-to-head, I can immediately say that the performance difference is nowhere near the price difference. The Hiby R6 III is technically more accomplished. If you want to hear the last tiny thing and the last tiny detail, including inner tone texture, from the recording, you will hear that better with R6 III. And also the soundstage is a bit wider and just more open area, breezier with R6 III. But the difference is not huge by any means. You really have to compare them directly head to head with a really good set of headphones or earphones to notice it. But on the other hand, there's a tonal difference, whereas R6 III is more fast and grippy and leaner sounding tonally, while R4 has more slam, more punch. It has weightier bass line, even though that bass line is a touch less resolving and shows a bit less inner tone texture than with R6. It feels bolder and healthier. And songs like I mentioned before, the Ting Tings, or for example this one, which I also like, it's a really great song, they just sound more engaging and healthier and better compared to leaner and thinner tonality of R6 III. And as I said, I have to give technical aspect and just detail retrieval to R6 III. It does that better. But if you're just relaxing and enjoying the music, I do think that many of you would actually prefer the overall tonality and punchiness and boldness of the sound of R4. And then if we actually count in the pricing and how much cheaper is R4, I don't know, man, it's getting really difficult to justify R6 III. Maybe it has some sort of feature that is really specific. I didn't even think about that when I was comparing them and preparing this review. You think about that for yourself. You have the spec sheet and feature sets, and if there is something really important to you, that might justify the price difference. But talking just about their sound, R4 is much closer to R6 than the price difference suggests, which leaves Hiby in a quite peculiar situation, where theirs much more affordable DAP is so close behind their noticeably pricier DAP that personally I, at this moment, cannot justify or recommend you to spend that much more on R6 III. But hey, Hiby, it's not my fault. It's your fault. You brought this on yourself. You should have priced R4 at least $350, and I would still give it a really positive review. But you've decided for $250, and that kind of pricing with this kind of performance is going to slightly cannibalize your own sales of your own pricier depths. So don't get mad at me. Be a big boy about it and just accept what you did and keep working on the next even better R6. Because for now, if somebody asks me which depth should I get below $500 even though R6 is still technically better, I would probably say go for R4. And that would be all for today, guys. Hope you liked the video. See you next time.